help their livelihood of their members, we usually look for them and then link them with partners like World Vision, so that they can able to assist the group.
Their produce is sold in the local markets in Isiolo town, with the women stating that with time they will expand to neighboring counties like Samburu and Marsabit. But even as they create space to produce their crops, they have faced some challenges that have threatened the future of their food production venture. The drought has forced elephants into human settlements in search of water.
Especially in the areas we are conducting or erecting the water structures, we have the elephants which have been very stubborn in terms of destruction of the water facilities. And our approach has been to have an extra drinking water trough to supplement the livestock drinking water trough, so that the elephants can have their place to drink the water.
With the changes witnessed in the environment lately due to climate change, organizations working with heavily affected communities have also faced the challenge of changing attitudes of the community to adopt new ways of survival in order to save future generations.
We are very intentional to ensure that everybody is on board to understand the effects of the climate change, because climate change is not a cultural practice and it's not also a proverb.
The women also appreciate that the new venture has enabled them feed their families balanced diets with a variety of fruits and vegetables to boost the immune system of the vulnerable in their communities. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
All right, let's take a look at the front pages of the dailies. I can see already on Twitter some comments. And a gentleman here, this is Ross, who says, I think it's not yet time for handshake. Oh dear, I keep... there we go. I think it's not yet time for handshake. We can consider one in 2033. Do share your views on the subject of discussion this morning, which is bottom-up cost of living. Raila sounds whistle on Ruto economic policies. Is it justified? Again, let me reintroduce my panelists. Professor Gitile Naituli, governance expert. Dr. Martin Olo, an advocate. Herman Manyora, a political analyst. And that informs the front page, actually, the cost of living of the Daily Nation, I beg your pardon. Kenyans find ways to beat rising costs. Harsh weather, as you can see, as you witnessed in that report by Leila Mohammed, disrupted global supply chains and depreciating shilling blamed. Contrary to President William Ruto's campaign promise to bring down the cost of living, prices of common commodities have soared during Kenya Kwanza's first 140 days in power, forcing citizens to devise tricks of surviving the hard times. Cooking oil, 4.3% increase between September and January. That is an increase of 16 shillings. Sugar has increased by 15.4% between September and January. That is an increase of 21 shillings. The cost of electricity has increased between August and January by 35 shillings. Petrol, 1 litre, has increased by 11.3% between August and January by 18 shillings. Potatoes, 41.9% increase between September and January. And the cost of living is something that Raila Odinga and his cohorts pressed yesterday. They raised concerns about a privatization bill, and they also raised concern around the government's pronouncements on licenses to bars. And he said, ukimaliza kazi unaburudika. And he asked these taxes that the Kenya Kwanza administration hopes to raise, where will they come from? He also said about 300,000 jobs are at risk, but we get into all of that. First, I'd like my panelists to comment on this. On Warpath, Raila alleges visit demand by Chebukati. The Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition party leader dismissed former Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission chairperson Wafula Chebukati. I beg your pardon, claimed, not dismissed, claimed former Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission chairperson Wafula Chebukati visited his current home just before the elections. Addressing his supporters at the historic Jacaranda grounds in Embakasi East, Odinga said Chebukati was accompanied by former commissioners Professor Abdi Gulier and Boya Molu, calling the revelation, a fresh dossier. The former Prime Minister challenged the three to come clean on the purpose of the visit, even as he called for their arrest. And TJ Kajwang said they first went to Tuju's home, Raila's home, and then he posed the question, where do you think they went next? Professor Gitile, Raila Odinga has given 2 weeks for UN inspectors to get involved in this audit. He's called for the electoral process. What do you make of his demands?
First of all, that demand is unrealistic because the UN will not get involved unless invited. It can only be invited by the sitting government. So, you know, when we have a legal government, they are doing politics, but the truth of the matter is the government is in office and it's legal. So UN won't get involved. In fact, nobody will get involved. But what he is doing, what Raila is doing, he is brilliantly using a very well-known path to a revolution. You take credibility away from institutions quietly. In the public eye, you diminish the institutions set up by the Constitution and the institution that governs society. So you constantly diminish them, and eventually they will be ignored, and then now you can have a revolution if you are cooking one. So those are statements he's making. You know they will not come through, but according to his people, the ones he's addressing, you see, I even trying to get the UN to come here, but they didn't come. So now it's us who are to do this job. So that is what he is doing.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Olo, is this something that the United Nations does?
Of course, on invitation, as Prof says, but it's good to say that you don't trust the Western nations, so you are looking for the UN in order for the UN to be able to be neutral, if you like. But again, as Professor is saying, we're not dealing with the legality here. We're dealing with legitimacy.
Yes.
So all you need to do is to question, and the institutions lose legitimacy. But we are also confirming one thing. We are confirming what we have all along feared, that our institutions are infiltrated with corruption, bias, and subversion. So if IEBC 3 commissioners say the other 4 IEBC's commissioners who are planning to subvert, then the other commissioners are also saying these other ones were subverting. One thing is confirmed, that IEBC was not neutral, it was not transparent, it did not conduct these elections in the most acceptable democratic way. That is being confirmed by either side. Now, when you add on allegations that even if the other commissioners went to demand bribes, then you are saying, hey, wait a minute, do we really have institutions? And what is that? Then you are saying that if that institution was so illegitimate or did not have legitimacy, then could it have given us any form of government that is legitimate? So you're questioning the very basis of the structures that you have. Now, having said that, the problem we have also is that even those in government are still showing that they are not with it. They're still focused on their opponents, and their opponents are doing what they know how to do best, which is picket, demonstrate, question their own legitimacy. Now, these guys are also organizing themselves in such a way to respond to them. So what we now have is a crisis of legitimacy, and that's what is being generated. With the time, we will soon say no reason to go and vote and so on. So basically, we are preparing ourselves to really lower down all the achievements that we have ever made, whether it's a new constitution, whether it's a new democracy, whatever it is we've said, we will water it down. And once you question that, question the school system, question everything else, it will be anarchy.
Okay. In response, and I'll get to the whole Azimio telling the DCI to keep off, but President William Ruto responded because Raila yesterday again reiterated what he stated in Kamkunji on Monday last week, and that was he does not recognize William Ruto as the President of the Republic of Kenya. William Ruto responded yesterday and said, I do not need anyone's permission to govern. In other words, I don't need your recognition. What did you make of that statement?
Well, it's correct, but you know what, Dr. Lowe will tell you that if I was Ruto, I would say nothing. I will not respond to that. Because you see, when you are the president, You don't have to respond to anything anyone else says. You are sworn in. You assumed office. You are now the recognized, not the legit. Remember, we are not talking about legitimacy now. We are talking about the law. So legally, you are in office. You don't have to respond to somebody who says that you are not the president. You see, have we ever heard Britain or America saying that we are independent? Because they are independent. So they don't say that we are an independent nation. So if you are the president, you can't say you are the president because you are the president. So I think responding to the opposition, that is what the opposition wants them to continue doing, because they want to shape away the credibility. They want to shape away the legitimacy. So they'll say, we don't recognize you. And then I'll say, I don't care. Even if you don't recognize me, I'm still the president. In other words, I'm independent. This is an independent country because you know you are not independent. So I would think that the government can just keep quiet and they continue working. I mean, remember the way Kibaki was pulled left, right, and the center. He didn't bother. He never replied to anyone. He just worked. He just delivered. He did his job.
Okay.
So the contest which is going on here is tricky if it continues for the country, because it's going to be setting the stage for another 2007. Because the moment you approach 2027 with this raka, you approach it without calmness. You approach it having taken away legitimacy from the presidency and from other institutions which are supposed to guide the society. Then you are in trouble. You reach the level where they said, we don't trust the courts, we don't trust this, we don't trust this. So if I were advising the state, the government, they should let the opposition do what they're supposed to do. Question, demonstrate, do whatever, but they should not think that they have a duty to respond to everything.
Okay.
Yes.
Daktari, this, I believe, when the president was commissioning construction of affordable housing in Shauri Moyo, he said, "Msinilete na msinibebe," and he said, "the interests of a few." Those, and he referenced the. So he said these guys took their children to Yala and then are now calling on you and your children to demonstrate. And he said he will not be distracted by the interests of a few at the expense of the many. Should he, do you agree with Prof? Should he have kept mum? Should he now stop responding?
You see, what I don't sometimes understand is whether our leaders understand this country. This country is least bothered about what Raila does with his family. They still love him. It's least bothered about what you do, whether you have killed or whether you have stolen. They don't know, they will still elect you. So those things will not stick. What we need to answer is, what are Kenyans' interests? So for the president, it is not about whether he can dismiss anybody. Remember, he's the president of a country that has mad people, very bright people, not very bright people, Christians, Muslims. I mean, there are people here who believe in nothing, they believe in something. So all these people are your people as a president. So whether they are speaking sense or not, you listen to them. You carry them along with you. Now, you have a situation where you have elections just held the other day. The results show you that you and your opponent were 50-50. Your opponent says he won, you say you won. So that's a question. Then you have a good number of Kenyans who never voted. Nobody has ever asked why they never voted. So as you don't govern, or as you govern, they are asking themselves, were we right anyway, not even to vote? And then you have a number of people who have voted, and you are now telling them that it didn't matter. In other words, you have a leader who has supporters. You have supporters. You are dismissing each other's support, each other. What do you want your supporters to do? So you are only animating what would otherwise be a calm situation. So yes, we shouldn't be seeing this ping pong, not from the presidency. Look at the prayer meetings. Prayer meetings are prayer meetings at Thanksgiving, you see, God's blessings. Not to fund political, agenda or to fund political heat. Because when you do that, you only help your opponents to take to the streets. Because if you are in church and you are politicking, then your opponents will go to the streets and politic. And then, so what do we gain? And you're even telling them, do whatever you want to do, picket for all you want, demonstrate Monday to Friday. What are you telling them? So basically, the message is, how is government responding to the alternative voices? At the same time, you are the one saying that I want the office of the opposition, that I want government to be checked. Then be ready for the noise. Be ready for these alternative views, and they may not be very nice for you. So you must be also, you choose. I think it's a choice. If people are nasty to you, do you also become nasty, or do you become gentle, or do you keep quiet?
All right.
And at best, if people are throwing stones, the best you should do is to keep quiet.
Okay. He did say that he's willing to sit down with Raila Odinga as a Kenyan, not to negotiate a handshake. But let's quickly flip through the rest of the pages, and then we'll get back to the subject matter. Teachers' funds scarcity as junior high schools open. Last week, Machogu revealed, I beg your pardon, I don't know what it is with my tongue this morning, revealed that more than 20,000 schools have been approved to host JSS. That is the junior secondary schools. Union praises decision to post primary school teachers to JSS. I see a photo here of the KUPPET Secretary General, and he was addressing journalists in Nairobi on January the 10th. In numbers, 30,000, the number of teachers who were recently recruited to teach junior secondary school and who report for duty today, 20,000. The number of primary schools approved to host junior secondary school learners across the country. Flipping over, risk of liver disease with bariatric surgery, that is a study, weight loss procedure, has been associated with a number of negative side effects. Helen Shikanda has that report in the Daily Nation, definitely one to look for. And then Raila Chebukati Gulie Molu came to my house with a list of demands, calling the revelation a fresh dossier. The former PM challenged the three to come clean on the purpose of the visit. Allegations, they came to Karen just before elections. The Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party leader claimed former Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission chairperson Wafula Chebukati visited his Karen home just before the elections, addressing his supporters at the historic Jacaranda grounds in Embakasi East. Odinga said Chebukati was accompanied by former commissioners Abdi Gulie and Boya Molu, calling the revelation a fresh dossier. The former Prime Minister challenged the three to come clean on the purpose of the visit, even as he called for their arrest. The Orange Democratic Movement party leader claimed to possess CCTV footage of the three in his house and dared them to state what they demanded during the visit. Spanner has been thrown into the works. Ruto dismisses protests as, quote, sabotage. President says he will not allow protests to distract him from delivering on his government from delivering on his promises to Kenyans. After the 2022 general elections, Kenyans spoke. They allocated us different roles and I got the government while my opponent was relegated to the opposition side. These statements were made in Narok yesterday. Cost of living soars in Ruto's 140 days. Prices of household items have gone up by as much as 40% since September when the president was sworn in. So that is on the front page. Actually, it's a front page report, or rather the highlighted report on the front page of the Daily Nation, Business Daily. Now, Equity will get up to 510 million shillings for acquisition of Spire Bank. Deal to avoid bank collapse, loss of teachers billions. Equity to get difference Spire's assets and liabilities. Walimu Sacco will pay Equity Group up to 510 million shillings for taking over the troubled Spire Bank in a deal that will see the teachers-backed lender lay off all its workers. That is definitely not good news. Forex reserves at 88-month low as debt repayments fall due. Kenya's foreign exchange reserves have dropped to the lowest level in 88 months as the nation Just read directly from my hard copy. Kenya's foreign exchange reserves have dropped to the lowest level in 88 months as the nation makes multi-billion shillings debt repayments, marking the second time in less than 3 months it is breaching the critical level of 4 months import cover. Reserves currently stand at 870.7 billion, equivalent to 3.92 months of imports, the Central Bank of Kenya said in its weekly bulletin last Friday. I believe the recommended is at least 4 months, so it's about 4 months, 3.92. I see on the ticker, Musheru bags top job at firm backed by Goldman Sachs. A Goldman Sachs-backed South African financial services startup has appointed former ICT Cabinet Secretary Joe Musheru as the president of the company to revamp its organization to rev up its expansion plans on the continent. I see Kenya Power gets 25 shilling billion loans repayment reprieve. Kenya Power has been given a financial reprieve after obtaining a repayment moratorium on 25.1 billion shillings worth of loans from international development partners. The company will now start servicing the debt after June of 2024, and duty-free maize imports call attracts 250 traders. At least 250 traders have applied for import licenses to bring in maize under the duty-free window as they seek to cash in on the waiver issued by the government. The document shows that the application to the Ministry of Agriculture was made between December 16th and 30th. Front page of the Taifa Leo. Now, Raila amrushia Ruto mishale. Picture here from Jacaranda. Makabiliano asisitiza kuwa hatambui urais wa Ruto na kuhimiza mashirika ya kimataifa yaje yafanye uchaguzi ili ukweli wa mambo ujulikane. Yeah, that is the front page of the Taifa Leo. Also see up here, wazazi walia karo ya kitapeli, walalama kunyonywa na wakuu wa shule kwa ada haramu. Mudavadi kinara wa magharibi atawazwa mlezi wa baraza la wazee wa jamii za ukanda huo. And front page of the East African, peace be with you. Pope Francis visits the region amid high tensions between DRC and Rwanda over security breaches, while South Sudan is enveloped in unending ethnic conflict. Will the combatants heed his peace call? More on that on pages 4 to 5 of the East African. I see here Tanzania journey to 2025 polls, a new dawn for the opposition after it held its first public rally in years and welcomed back exiled former presidential contender Tundu Lissu. Clear to fly over Somalia, the International Air Transport Association has restored air traffic control services and safety over the country after 30 years. More on that in the East African. I see here too much market, not enough trade. Experts bemoan low volumes of intra-African trade markets. What does Kenya want at the bourse? Kenya demands for rejoining regional stock exchange. Rwanda skills transfer in financial sector. Regulators dream of local expertise taking shape at banks, and Uganda walk back on liberalization. Neighbors rise, see renationalization in Kampala. So they're looking at renationalization. In Kenya, we are looking at privatization, part of what was discussed at Jacaranda yesterday. Let's take a look at the front page of the Standard. Take a break and come back and interrogate those statements. We've looked at the Daily Nation. Standard, no let up as Ruto-Raila trade words. Azimio leader Raila Odinga yesterday called on the United Nations and the Commonwealth to probe last year's election in the next 2 weeks, while President William Ruto told him to forget any deal-making and offered to only discuss development of the nation. Front page of the Star. And speaking of privatization, I see KQ warns of another loss season. That is on page 27 of the Standard. The Star now exposed 1 billion shilling schools bursary scam. Auditor General's report shows counties disbursed millions to non-existent students and institutions. This was the front page story of the Daily Nation on Friday. Raila digs in as Ruto remains adamant. A clash of the wills, a battle of the wills. Okay, I will leave that there. And we'll take a break, but when we come back, we've also been joined by Herman Manyora. Let me just remind you what the topic of conversation this morning is: bottom-up cost of living. That is what we are asking. That is what Raila Odinga alleged yesterday. Raila sounds whistle on Ruto economic policies. I raised the question of a bill on privatization. And that proposal, I wonder what my panelists make of it. They also talked about the cost of living in general. So we get into all of that, as well as statements made by both Raila Odinga and William Ruto. William Ruto said he's willing to sit down with Raila Odinga, but to discuss development on the other side of this break.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the Morning Fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the Morning Fix.
I really want to get through this. So let's just forget about her and focus on you and me.
We are old partners in crime. And no, we're not friends. We're actually dating. I'm her boyfriend.
You cannot even begin to imagine the hell I've been through since this woman showed up. But you know what? All that is over now. Mickey told me the truth, and now we're going to try again.
All right, Jenny, time to go home now.
As long as you tell this woman to stop sending messages to my husband, and to stop using your daughter as an excuse to see him.
It had to be you.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways. And Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. My panelists already actively discussing the subject matter and borrowing. And borrowing actually was addressed by Ndindi Nyoro. And he said the media is not being fair. We've talked about the 500 billion shillings, which has been contested, and that was amended by the Daily Nation. I believe they amended that to 137 billion shillings. But Ndindi Nyoro did say, you need to tell us who borrowed this money. He says, this is the 2022-2023 budget, which belongs to, what's his name, to former President Uhuru Kenyatta. And he said the deficit was over 860 billion shillings. So he says it is not fair to lay that at William Ruto's doorstep, but we'll get into all of that. There are also allegations yesterday, and I'll address this one to Herman Manyora. There were allegations yesterday that all these threats of maandamano and all this, and if we're looking at the cost of living and taxes, there were allegations that they alluded, that is the Kenya Kwanza side, but it is former President Uhuru Kenyatta who is behind these calls for maandamano, because he does not want companies associated with his family to pay tax. So it is said that he's the one who is sponsoring this whole clamor.
I don't know what happened to the celebrated thinking in the 90s that African leaders should be encouraged to retire. You know, I know we forget very fast. We were stuck in the politics where nobody wanted to retire. Mainly because, not just because power is sweet, of course it's sweet, but mainly because people feared after leaving office they'll be haunted and hunted and persecuted. So when we reintroduce the same by roping in this Uhuru thing, I think we are going back to what we didn't want. But more fundamentally, Uhuru wanted to kill Chebukati, or so it is said, because it's government. And Raila asked, just as I also asked, how difficult would it be for a president to kill an individual who is guarded by the state, by the government, headed by that president? I mean, now, if Uhuru wanted to mess these elections as head of state and head of government, what could be easier? You know, we just hear talk of deep state, you had a deep state, you had system, but an outgoing president has the capacity to mess an election, has the capacity to do a lot of things to make it difficult even if you take over. So why would he peacefully vacate State House, leave power, then you begin associating him with schemes to mess? I mean, it doesn't add up. The logic just refuses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Dr. Olo? Does the logic refuse?
You know, the logic refuses. I think what the Kenya Kwanza team is doing is continuously making allegations, and these allegations are not going to stick. They hounded Uhuru, they denigrated the issue of handshake. I mean, they just did not have, they were contemptuous. And by the way, let me also put this on record. They are receiving the same treatment they were giving Uhuru when Uhuru was the president. Now they are on the receiving end, they want to go and revisit Uhuru. I mean, this country sometimes we have very short memories. When these people were in opposition while in government, they were a thorn in the flesh of Uhuru and handshake. Now they are in government, they are still going for Uhuru who is outside government. So what they are doing is that they are creating a script, or they are keeping to the script, which essentially will mean that those inside government don't have the legitimacy, those outside government are the ones who have the legitimacy, because they are questioning everything government is doing, and therefore they are looking good. When they were out, they said cost of living was very high, borrowing was rampant, they were going to bring down these things. Today, they continue those issues unabated. Now, the other day I heard, eventually they said Huduma number was, you know, waste of time, waste of money. Remember, Huduma number costed a whooping 10 billion plus.
19 actually.
19 billion. Now, you want to dismiss it and you want to bring something else which will cost us several billions. So what kind of wastage are we talking about? So at some point we must call the people in government to account for their statements and for their, you know, utterances. Because you can't keep piling costs on Kenyans. Now, look at it. You go on a Sunday, a day of rest, you parade civil servants, you use public resources to go and pray. When I go to pray, I don't use public resources. I should not use public resources. Those are for public functions. So going to pray is a personal choice you make. Now, what wastage is that? If Uhuru was wasteful, then are you now going to compensate that by being wasteful equally? So the question is that we still need to see the real promises that we are given, the real Kenya Kwanza that we are looking for. For now, it's politics 2027. And for that reason, the opposition are right to also organize in view of 2027. Unless they change tact, we will see more politics.
Everyone will pay tax. They're saying that is what Kenya Kwanza is saying is at the bottom of this clamor. Professor?
You know, the Kenya Kwanza government is falling into a trap with the opposition. Opposition's job right now is to engineer disaffection with their policy, disaffection with the state institutions. That is their job, because they need to seize power. So now, when the response comes from the other side, they are falling now. They are now doing what the opposition would like them to do. And that's why they need to think deeper. The other way you create dissatisfaction is written here by one of these journalists. Says that...
Which paper is that?
This is Standard.
Standard,
page 6. Kenya has some cleaning up to do. Avoid force use that create poor tension. So force use is not just about the poor tension, but also it will enhance dissatisfaction with the government and with the institutions. So the person with the bigger responsibility to avoid the force use is actually the state. Because once the state engages in the force use, and assuming the opposition is, then what you are doing is you are doing their work. You are assisting them. So there is a lot of learning here from the state, and like Dr. Law said, that they need to understand that they are in the government. And then, if you see now they are doubting their legitimacy, they need to accept that legitimacy. You see, when you defend yourself, remember I told you that it is us who stand up and say, oh, we are an independent country, because we know we are not independent. We will never have America saying they're independent of France or UK. So when you stand up and say, I'm the president, you are doubting that you are actually the president. So we need, these people, they need to know that they are the ones who have responsibility of maintaining calmness. They are the ones with the responsibility of giving us hope for a better tomorrow. Because I can tell you how this thing will work out. If this tension continues, the way it is now in Burundi, this is a very dangerous thing economically. Money does not like insecurity, so there will be capital flight. Even local investors, instead of putting money in Kenya, they'll be trying to put it in Tanzania, in Rwanda, where they can predict stability of a longer period. So the government should not encourage the raka, the shouting match, because it will have other consequences, which may not be right now apparent. So what they need to do also is listen to what the opposition is saying. The Kenya tax regime is not normal. It's irrational. Because it's irrational, you see, what the government policy need to focus on, to answer them, focus on rationalizing the tax regime so that it can promote growth, because right now it doesn't, it's undermining growth. I don't know whether they listened to Churchill, the former British Prime Minister, at one time. He said he's not aware of any country which tax itself to prosperity, because there is none. So, tax regime. Then number two, they need to deal with the cost of power. Input, one of the primary input to production. Because the companies have been living in Kenya, going to areas where they can manage their cost of producing goods. So they are not focusing on that. And the other dimension is government waste. So sometimes what you do when you're in government is you listen to those fellows, then you pick what they are saying, you go and correct it. Now they have nothing to talk about them because you are correcting it. But if you make it a shouting match, you won't benefit them. Because you see the way Ruto, quote and quote, won the election, he leveled Uhuru Kenyatta. He leveled Uhuru Kenyatta as a dynasty. He was not competing with Raila. The election was between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, dynasties. Then he created the Azola. Then for 5 years or 6 years, every day, he talked about them until it sank. So these fellows, they can now also label Ruto right now. He's in the power. They can start to see what they are doing here. Fukuzen, Muizi, even though the Muizi thing didn't work during the other election, it didn't work because these Christians, they have been told that Jesus came for thieves. So calling somebody a thief doesn't really deliver politically. But if you seeing it for the next 5 years, I love the cost of living continue to rise, then it sticks. Okay. And it works for them in 2027. I don't think demonstration will deliver. If I were them, I would have these rallies, controlled rallies, peaceable rallies, which does not interfere with anybody's business. Then they will continue now getting the dissatisfied UNDA people back. The Azolas, these Azolas swing like pendulum. These fellows will not be fakes to anyone. You know, they used to be Raila. They swung into Ruto. They can also swing him back to Raila.
All right. So, and it's interesting, you said, they did say they're going around the country. So they said next week they'll be in Kamkuji, Kibra. And then I think the week after that, they'll be in Machakos. So they do plan to make this like a national...
They need to appoint demonstration and do the rallies.
Yes.
Because rallies, they will be advocating, they will be labeling Ruto and label him, label. So they continue like that. They can cause sufficient dissatisfaction, even if they call now for people uprising in 2 years' time, after they have created a ground zero, and after the misery of Kenyans has continued, which look like it will continue, because I don't see the government doing what it needs to do to reduce the misery, because the misery is caused by misuse of resources.
Okay.
So as long as there is no focus to reduce the misuse, so they will get traction. And that's what the state needs to know, so they can counter.
All right. Haman, I was listening to the 1 p.m. news yesterday, and a gentleman was interviewed by Sidney Chazima. At the time, Raila Odinga and Martha Karua Kalonzo MPs were at JTM Church in Embakasi. And this guy said, and it's something Professor has said that has raised this for me, is he says hustlers swing like pendulum.
Yeah.
So one gentleman who was being interviewed, he said, walituambia wakieka Biblia chini hivi bei ya unga itashuka.
Itakuwa 70 bob.
What would you advise William Ruto to do to retain his hustler base? Because yesterday he said, it doesn't matter what you write, I will focus on my agenda. And he went on now to talk about what their plans for irrigation. He said we're constructing 100 big dams. He talked about 1,000 smaller dams, you know, just efforts. Because Prof, even as you talk of taxes, he has talked about efforts to lower the cost of production. And his focus on agriculture. So what would be your advice to William Ruto so that, Haman, so that his base does not become disillusioned?
Yeah, before I advise the president, I hope he takes my advice. I want to think my friend here is wrong. That continue with rallies but no demonstrations. It's like to say a woman continue being pregnant past 9 months without giving birth. These rallies will give birth to demonstrations and destruction. That goes without saying. You see, there are a number of things Ruto could do to ensure that he keeps his side and actually keeps the whole country. The first thing is to play the politics right. If you get the politics right, everything else just falls in place. Like it's been said here repeatedly, just know you are the president. Just that alone is enough. Knowing that you are the president, acting like the president, speaking like the president. You know, you are speaking like you are still campaigning, like you are still in the competition with Raila and the rest. No, you are the president for heaven's sake. That's the beginning. When you do that, you get the politics right because you cool the temperatures. You get to a point where you even speak with people like Raila, not for handshake, because as sure as day follows night, there will be some talking to be done at some point in the future, whether anybody likes it or not. Whether Raila likes it or not, whether Ruto likes it or not, they are going to sit down and talk. Why not start now? And start over things that you can talk about, like elections. But soon, if you don't do that, you'll be talking about your own stay in the State House, whether it is valid or not. You know, that's how bad it can get. That's the first thing you should do. Then the second thing you should do, and I think this is just common sense. IMF has never helped any country into prosperity. World Bank. They have always messed countries. You don't need to be an economist to know that. Listen to them, but please reserve the right to make the decisions. So in other words, if you think the country is at a point where we need to employ subsidies, I don't support them myself. We need to employ subsidies as a short-term measure to make sure that the cost of living is manageable by Kenyans, which is what that guy is saying. Biblia chini, unga chini. That is possible if you don't listen to IMF and World Bank like a houseboy. You must know you are the president and head of state, and the people you lead can get you out of State House. So listen to them, work with them, but they should not dictate to you certain things you do, because you have to manage the cost of living now, not tomorrow. Tomorrow may be too late. With these rallies of Raila, and you are still thinking unga can be as expensive as it is. And look here. Fuel is where it is. Petrol is about whatever it is now. What would happen if the international crude oil prices just went up like they did about 2 years ago? What will you do? Look at what has happened to the dollar, over which you have no control. Our shilling is almost becoming worthless. These things will affect the cost of living. So in the meantime, do what you can. Even as you look into 2-3 years ahead for long-term solutions, look for short-term solutions. So that man about the Bible, you address him. Otherwise, you lose the hustlers. You see, people on the ground, they say on the ground, they go with the stomach. If they are hungry, they will listen to Raila. And if they listen to Raila, and I want to advise government, and I've been advising government, and I hope the intelligence people know these things. We are in the 21st century. State power is negotiated power. You negotiate with the citizens to elect you. You negotiate with your competitors to let you govern so that you are legitimate. So long as negotiations are not complete like ours, your stay and occupants of State House or White House or whatever it is becomes very, very tricky. So that negotiation aspect should never be off the table for the president.
Okay.
Yes.
And he did say he's willing to sit. No, Prof, let Dr. Olo come in. I'll come to you.
That's one thing to support him very quickly.
Dr. Olo, something that happened at the Azimio rally yesterday. Those gathered that kept being asked, Mmeshiba ama hamjashiba? They kept saying hatujashiba. Yani, the conversation was around the stomach. Like Haman is saying, do you agree with him that William Ruto will be forced to address the cost of living in the short term? Because yesterday he stayed on message. He said we have to raise enough taxes to fund our operations. We cannot keep borrowing.
You know, there is something that we need to appreciate. Baba's politics is not about handouts. He animates and he ideology. You know, he makes sure that people have an ideology or something that they are working around. Now he's building that ideology about hunger and that you are sleeping hungry, and it's the business of government to make sure that you feed. So he'll build that. On the other side, the hustler narrative is about giving people empowerment. The wheelbarrow story, if you remember, we are going to give Mama Mboga, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. That we are going to make sure that your economy is working. The burden is on those who made those statements to actually ensure that the economy is working for the small person. As soon as that does not happen, handouts cannot last 5 years, cannot last 3 days, cannot last a month. Handouts are just handouts. So they have to go back to that place and find out, how do we reconnect with the people and fix the things we said? By the way, it was easier for them to shout and to say what was wrong when they were outside government. Now that they're inside government, the expectations are very clear. They must deliver on those. All the other side needs to do is to question whether those things are being done or not, and they will be legitimate. Yeah, the legitimacy will be there. So that is their business. So what then the government needs to do is either to fulfill its promises or to come to their realization, and I like what Haman is saying, that governance is negotiated. For the truth of the matter is this, and even for all of us sitting here.
But Dr. Why then do we go to the ballot?
No, wait. I want to make this point, then I can ask. Let's all agree. The cost of living isn't going to go down because somebody said that once they put down the Bible, it will go down. The factors that go into cost of living are external, some are internal. External because you have the Ukraine war. External because you have the appreciation of the dollar. External because you have other dynamics out there. Internal because we do have policies that are funding our borrowing and so on. So that what we need is a sense of calmness, a sense of facing reality. We need to come and face each other and say, wait a minute, we're in a bad place. We need to sit down and agree how we can go forward. Not name calling, not accusations, not blame game. So that style of blame game won't help us. The truth is, these costs are going up because we have said we don't want to give subsidies. Now we have removed subsidies. Remember, when the people or the citizens are pinched, the responsibility of government is either to reduce taxes or to cushion them. So subsidies are a mechanism for government intervention in a manner that helps to give reprieve. And subsidies happen in the US, happen in France. IMF does not tell them such things. But in Africa, we are told that subsidies are bad for the economy, which is not true. That's what we were told about structural adjustment and so on. So we need to listen, but we also need to be realistic that governments have a role in intervening in marketplaces. And sometimes the way they do it is using the subsidy route. So why do we go to elections? Precisely. Every 5 years, we assess our leaders, we assess our well-being, our welfare, and we say, no, we have not thrived under olive barrows. We want to try Professor Kitule here. So when we try him, of course he has to give us hope, he has to tell us things that he'll do. And then again after 5 years, we'll say, man, you promised us, but 5 years down the line, we are not, our status is not better. Now, this government came to tell us that they were about hustlers, they were about the common person, and they gave the common person hope, and they actually whipped everybody to their side. The time for them to deliver for those people is now. Otherwise, they might face the same people questioning them.
Okay. And the reason I asked that, and I'll ask it of Herman as well, because you're all saying this is a negotiated thing. But if I look at this quote, and I had it myself yesterday, William Ruto said, after the 2022 general election, Kenyans spoke. They allocated us different roles. And I got the government while my opponent was relegated to the opposition side. So what is there to negotiate? I'll come to you, Herman, with that. But Prof, Herman has responded to you. And you've said, let these guys continue these rallies, you know, for the next 2 years, meet the people, hammer the government where the economy is concerned. He says you cannot, it's like saying, but not demonstrate. That is what you've said, but not demonstrate. Yeah. He says, ukibeba mimba 9 months, there has to be a delivery.
Yeah, but I'm seeing that delivery in 2 years. You see, if you want to get in good results, creating ground soil of support. Okay, you can't just start with that, with the result. You can't start with the end. So the rallies, they will be indicative. Because if you look at these price increases from September when the UNDA government took office to January 2023, this is very high increase in prices of basic commodities. And you know, UNDA attended some UNDA rallies during the campaign, and I felt there was a statement, a dangerous slogan they were using, which could backfire very badly. They used to say, nikisema UNDA, you say pesa mufukoni. You know, this hustle has actually believed that the ones UNDA go it off, there will be money in the pocket. Now they are not seeing that money in the pocket. So is the opposition in bureau on that. Say these were our lies. Okay, create all that story around those lies. They are not interested in you. When they borrow the money, they steal it. You know, it's falsehood because you don't know whether they are stealing, they are doing, but everyone is using falsehood. Now do that for the next two to 3 years. You will make the match whichever direction you want them to go, because unless the government deals with what the former Chief Justice called in bandit economy, they can't help anyone here. You are talking about power. The problem with the power that is not being addressed is there is the power generated by the state, and there is power generated by what is called independent power producers. You know how they pay? You go and look at the web page of Kenya, of KPLC, how it compensates. The Keningen, which is a state-owned, and get 5 shillings and 40 cents per unit. The independent power producers, they get from 48 shillings to 173 shillings per unit. This is where your problem lies when it comes to power production. Now, I don't think Jubilee government, the UNDA government, has not even attempted to address that problem. Okay?
And they will not.
And they will not address
it. The people behind the independent producers are the IMFs and the IFCs.
Yeah, exactly.
Have given them loans to do that, so they must recoup there.
Because what is so interesting is even the way we pay them is scandalous. You know, this Turkana is going to Turkana wind something. Those fellows are paying dollars, meaning that the Kenya is importing air. Because once you are producing with our wind coming from the territory, but you are paying in foreign currency, you have now important that wind. So unless that is unrest, the cost of production of goods in this country will not go down. If it doesn't go down, that means the prices will continue, the shilling will continue depreciating, the Azolas will not have money in their pocket, and the opposition, if they cleverly exploit that, avoid annoying business people, avoid annoying innocent Kenyans, just educate the Azolas. In any case, I won't interrupt them, me or even Dr. here, none of us will assist these fellows if they want a revolution. Those Azolas will. So just educate those. Just continue for 2 years with seminar style rallies. Just label them. Now, the end result is now you can decide which direction you want to move them. They will move. Right. But if you start within demonstrations, you may not be able to control them because in demonstrations can be infiltrated. And the state will actually do that. Infiltrate, cause breakages, cause violence and there. Because I can tell you all the violence we have had in Kenya, even electoral violence, it's just that we are very dishonest people. Opposition has no capacity for violence. It has to be engineered by the state. It's just that we are not honest people, basically. We are really total liars. Without the state engaging in the violence, you see how peaceful the last election was? It was peaceful because the state did not engage into violence, allowed us to campaign and to vote peacefully. So the trouble with the demonstration is that it may invite the state in undermining it by engineering hooligans.
Okay.
And of course, I mean, what is this guy from former Nairobi governor, Sonko. Sonko told us what they were doing. They buy a few cars, burn them on Ngong Road. So, but I want to agree with both my colleagues here that talking is the best way out for anybody. And when you talk, you lose nothing.
All right.
When you talk, you don't necessarily talk to your friends. You talk to the people you differ with. So there can be common ground. And then in that common ground you act. Because it's the interest of the government, it's the interest of the opposition for Kenyans to live nicely.
All right.
And to live in a way that they can afford a life.
Okay.
So because it's in the both interest, it's good that they talk.
Okay. And Haman, you talked about power and you talked about destruction. Kimani Ichung'wah yesterday issued a warning and he said if you cause destruction, muvunje vitu in Nairobi, you will know who owns those businesses. That was his threat. You will quickly learn who owns those businesses. But speaking of power, stakeholders, EPRA, KenGen, Kenya Power have a session today to unbundle the new tariffs that Kenya Power has applied to apply, which would increase the cost of power significantly. But perhaps that is some of what they'll be demystifying today. How you've talked about it might be too late if William Ruto waits for the long term to address the rising cost of living. But isn't it prudent in the long term?
To do what?
To buckle in, spend what you can afford, and wait for things to ease up further down the road, as opposed to a populist move of applying subsidies such as now. Although you did state you don't support subsidies.
But before that, you asked what I meant by negotiation.
Yes.
You negotiate for power in a modern state through what we call periodic elections. You convince the people. You negotiate with the people and they give you the power. It's a negotiation. Now, negotiation also involves contestations. There will be contestation that will go to the High Court, the Supreme Court, about the laws of election and this and the other. The contestation finally would end with the Supreme Court. And after the Supreme Court has pronounced itself, the negotiation and the contestations come to an end. Now you enter phase 2 of negotiations as the president, which means now you must negotiate with the citizens by doing that which you told them you will do. And the opposition is also there, and you must negotiate with them to allow you to rule by doing some of the things they are pushing you to do. And in parliamentary democracies, they keep telling you you'll go home tomorrow. You know, you are the prime minister, but tomorrow there will be a vote of no confidence. The negotiations continue until the next election. In our circumstances, the negotiations did not end with the Supreme Court. That means the issue of legitimacy now creeps in. And what Raila is saying, he's not trying to prepare for 2027. He's saying the government is in power illegally. It's an illegitimate government. What does that mean? That means we want you out because you are not supposed to be in the first place. That is a very dangerous situation. And it's dangerous because the state does not have power more than the society. Society has more power than the state. The state may have the monopoly of weapons and force, but that is not. And how many policemen do we have in this country? Last time I checked, it was about 100,000 or so, even if you double 200. Against a population of 50 million people, maybe 30 adults. I mean, can the police even face 1 million citizens?
But
in the Philippines, it was the citizens.
On the flip side,
in the
can you raise that to 1 million?
In the Philippines, it was the citizens who are standing between the armies to separate them. So it shows you it is society that has more power than the state when the rubber meets the road. And this is what people like Ishunga perhaps don't know. And I will forgive them. Maybe they don't understand. The power of the state is so limited. It is limited within that context of negotiations. If the negotiations allow you to govern, then you use the state power and state instruments. But if that is contested beyond the Supreme Court, it becomes a very tricky situation which every country must avoid.
Okay.
Now, to the cost of living. We all know why we are suffering. Let's not pretend. It is true the cost of living is bad. People are suffering. There are many Kenyans who have not taken children to school. They don't have fees, okay? They are now being harassed by this so-called junior high school. New uniform. The kids would have continued with the uniform they had. Now you must buy new uniform, new culture, new what, new demands. It is really bad, and yet we know the problem. This problem, the solution does not lie in increasing taxes the way government is trying to do. The solution lies in two things. One, have a realistic budget. Stop budget padding, where you put things in the budget like those dams they are talking about, because you put money there which you will follow to it. Stop that.
Budgeting for corruption.
Don't budget for corruption. And number two, we have admitted from the highest level that we steal 1/3 of our budget. If you can just save a quarter of that 1/3, in our case, we are talking about 1 trillion shillings we steal. If you can save 500 billion shillings, you don't need to overtax Kenyans. So one, have realistic budgets. Stop budgeting for corruption. And number two, step out there and stop corruption and save the Kenyans from further taxations. Look here. Where does corruption in this country reside? It resides in the energy sector. The kind of shenanigans that goes on in the energy sector. You will cry if you knew a quarter of it. The president can stop that immediately. Some of the contracts we have entered into, the so-called independent power suppliers, surely we can tell them this, punda mechoka. You may want to continue making these abnormal profits, but in a country that's about to collapse. So be realistic. Let us renegotiate these deals.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Speaking of profits, unreasonable profits, part of what was raised yesterday, and I remember I didn't give you guys a chance to comment on the whole DCI keep-off thing, and we'll get to that, but since we are still on the economy, Raila Odinga, so William Ruto spoke yesterday. He's a deputy spoke a couple of days before that, and he said, we are losing a lot of people to drunkenness and drug abuse, and we need to do something. A few companies cannot make scandalous profits at the expense of our young people. Raila Odinga then came back at that. And then he said, what was that Tusker ad? Okay, something
makes us equal.
Kuburudika baada ya kazi.
Baada ya kazi.
Baada ya kazi watu waburudike. And he asked him, isn't what you're suggesting counterproductive? Because he said these taxes you want to raise, you know, alcohol is taxed heavily as a sin tax. These taxes you want to raise, where will they come from? And then he talked about also the jobs that would be lost as a result. You know, it's to me it's a dilemma, because a moral dilemma. And also, there is a cost to drunkenness. There is a cost to drug abuse. What do you make of those two statements?
Olive, this is not a theocracy. This country is not a moral country. So let's not apply morals on our economy. Let's not go there. It's not. So, and it's those sins that we that are actually generating income for this economy. So let us be very careful. You see, therein lies the problem of ideology. On one end, they are saying that Sakaja is disrupting businesses in Nairobi. On the other end, they are going to disrupt businesses in the villages. They are telling us that bars should only be, there should only be one bar in whatever. Now, there's an economy around alcohol. There's an economy that you have just unearthed, because by the time you brought back this guy in Thika, whose factory had been closed down, by the time you are supporting the alcohol industry in Naivasha, basically what you are saying is that these guys are bringing money into this economy, these guys are employing people, and that the taxman is actually destroying them. So you are actually asking the taxman to go easy on them. In the meantime, you are going hard on bar owners and you want to close them. So where do you want these guys to sell the alcohol? Now, that said, there is an issue there of mixed messages. You can't have your cake and eat it. You can't go to church and expect everybody goes to church. And I'm a church goer myself.
I
but I'm not going to expect that everybody on a Sunday will be going to church. So what we are saying is that this country belongs to all of us. Even those drunkards are Kenyans. Those who smoke are Kenyans. Those who don't drink are Kenyans. There are many of us, and we make choices. And for those choices, that's why we need a government. The government's business is regulation. If we are over drinking, what does the government do to regulate? Takes up the taxes, makes it painful for us to continue doing that. Of course, the same government regulates whether the cheap liquor comes into the country or not. So again, the role of governments, the only way government intervenes in situations is to regulate and to bring in sanity in that area, not to close businesses, not to disrupt businesses. You've seen business owners, bar owners saying, no, you want to disrupt. That was the story in Nairobi. Now you can't say in Nairobi it's not good to close bars in the estates, but in the villages it's okay to close bars so that you only have one. So mixed messages. But there's something that we were saying about negotiation, which I want to put in context. Bipartisanship, the spirit of bringing different views together in order to achieve a common position, is a political tool that works where we are looking for national good as opposed to partisan interests. So, when the Republicans and the Democrats come together on a national issue, such as COVID, or a national issue such as terrorism and so on, they are saying that this thing has a capacity to destroy either. So it's not whether you talk to Democrats or not, but it has a capacity to destroy the country. So you come together, you agree. When we talk about negotiations, we are saying when you talk to opposition, it means on matters of economy, you can't get it right when you are not talking to everybody and when you are not taking a bipartisan approach to it. Otherwise, the other side will be sabotaging as you say you are growing. And there's something that William Ruto is saying about, we are concentrating on development agenda. No, this country, development does not sell. Uhuru was building roads to all the way, dual carriage to Nyeri. People in Nyeri were still abusing him. Uhuru was building expressway in this country. We still call him names. You can do whatever you want to do in those big projects, big dams, Kumaror, and what we also know about those big projects is that they are a very lucrative avenue for extortion and for corruption. So those things he's saying that we are concentrating on the development agenda. What people are saying, they want food. Don't tell them you are doing railway, you are bringing power. They are asking for food. They are asking for money in their pocket to take their children to school. Address those issues. Don't tell them that you are busy planning for climate change, planning, I don't know, for irrigation, planning for what. They might have long-term effects, but in the meantime, their short-term needs, address them.
Okay, but they are focused on farmer issues. We'll come back to that. We'll take a break. We'll continue the conversation on the other side.
Centum Real Estate brings to you 265 Elma 1 Apartments, the newest and most stylish development in Kasarani. Pay a deposit of 250,000 Kenya shillings and the balance in flexible installments or mortgage finance.
Who am I? Why am I here? What will I be remembered for?
These questions come to a man at different stages of his life.
Early for some, late for others. Yet some men go through life groping for answers.
But fortunately for you, this doesn't have to be the case.
The second edition of Man Cave is an event
where you'll get to spend time with different men. Learn from those who've gone ahead of you
on the journey that is a man's life. Take a trip to the Serene Lake House, Tigoni, and experience the perfect boys getaway. Full of fun-filled games, cars, food, nyama choma, drinks, networking opportunities. 25th of February. Grab your tickets by going to www.kenyabars.com today. The Man Cave. It's a man's affair.
My name is Michael Olunga. Watch Sport On every Monday, 10 p.m. on NTV.
Claiming your assets is easy. Simply visit UFAA website www.ufaa.go.ke or dial *361# or visit Huduma Center near you.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. Prof, swali next ni yako. What do you say to Raila? I know we commented about this, Raila Odinga calling in the UN, telling the DCI to keep off. You've said your advice to them is for the next 2-3 years, focus on Hama, the Kenya Kwanza administration. Tell Kenyans this is what they promised you, they have not delivered. Are you then suggesting that Raila Odinga abandon his pursuit for what he said is truth and justice? Because when he spoke in church yesterday, he quoted Archbishop, I think it was Archbishop Tutu. And he said there cannot be justice without truth, there cannot be freedom without justice, and there cannot be, what came after freedom? I think development. You know?
Then development. And
yes. So.
No, I'm not advising him to abandon anything. I'm just thinking that he needs to build that critical mass. Before now, he can do whatever it is that he's planning to do without that critical mass, building it fast. He can't go very far. You know, I read a satire in the social media. These Kenyans are more clever than people are giving them credit, both the opposition and the government. Somebody was arguing that nobody should sympathize with the Kenyan suffering in the social media. He said the Kenyans need to suffer because they are strange animals, they are strange human beings who work against personal interest. He said that fellow was arguing that wherever a rational being is confronted with an opportunity to take action, you always choose that action which maximizes return to you and minimizes loss. So he said he was arguing that UNDA did not promise anything, and therefore UNDA should be left alone. He said the Azimio promised free education. Now they will be demanding it if they put them to power. They promised 6,000 shillings for family single mothers. They will be demanding that too. They promised free medical cover. Then the fellow says, UNDA promised bottom up. So, bottom up, according to that fellow, the source of the amount to no promise. But you chose it. You see, you are not rational because you didn't maximize the return to you. Now, what I'm saying here is the opposition need to grant sort of disaffection. When that has amassed enough, sufficient numbers, then they can sit down and decide how they want to use them. Because you saw what happened in Ukraine, People's Power, the revolution, the Orange Revolution.
Orange Revolution.
Okay? You saw what happened in the Philippines. So if they want to move these Azolas in that direction, first they need to tell them how they were cheated. You understand? Tell them until it goes in. They can't start with the demonstrations right now because the Azolas have not really suffered enough. You see, they need to suffer more, according to this young man who was writing in the source. You know, these fellows are really brilliant. That young man is saying that the suffering need to sink. So the opposition is helping the government unnecessarily. Allow them to increase suffering by taxes and all these things they are doing. So that when now the suffering is sufficient, then you come in and now mobilize that in disaffection. And now you can have a social revolution if you are looking for one. So I think in both of them, they need to pay attention to these Kenyans.
All right.
Because they have started thinking very broadly. Now that thinking broadly is what usually germinates to a revolution.
Okay.
Because Kenya usually really, we are very laid back people. It's very handy to go there. Because it's very handy to go there. These people, both the opposition and the government, if they don't start thinking carefully, they will create conditions for these people to go there.
All right. Herman, you were not here when we were commenting about the Raila's 2-week ultimatum. So I will invite you to comment on that. I'm curious what you have to say to that. He says UN inspectors to be the ones carrying out the audit of the electoral process. And then he went on, otherwise, alisema hamtujui sisi. That is what he said.
You don't know us.
You don't know us.
Yes. And ask Moi.
Yes. Ah, you watched? Yes. That is what he said.
You know, I think I've been trying to make a point which maybe, and I'm a teacher. I don't know how I'm failing to make the point.
No, it's your students.
The point I'm trying to make is this, and I hope people are listening and they should share with Kimani Ichung'wah and Ruto and the rest. Raila just want to give them trouble. So when you talk of 2 weeks, that is almost an impossible demand. These are not boys you can just summon, come to Kenya in 2 weeks. And Kenya is a sovereign state. They can't just land here. So these are impossible demands you are making. And that's why Prof here is getting it wrong. He wants a rational approach, logical approach, educate people, go to Lake Victoria, the shores and tell them there's so much fish here, yet the government is, no. You want to walk up the crowds and hype the things, and you must quick, short, and what? Medics will tell you. It must be quick, short, and severe. Yeah, the word is severe. You see? So if you want to achieve this thing, it cannot go beyond 2-3 months. You must hit all these rallies in the country, then come back to Nairobi. And by the time you come back to Nairobi, Ruto will sit down and listen to what you are saying. Because you'll be telling him, leave State House. This is what I'm trying to tell you. People are not getting it. And look at it this way. Look at the Raila you are seeing. This is not the Raila Ruto is used to. This is a different Raila. Raila has had a war with himself, a war of image, to be accepted by the West that feared him. Even the business community, this Nairobi business community where I belong, but the really business guys in this country, they feared Raila. So he was trying to create the image of an acceptable person. And that has cost him because in the process he has lost his core supporters. If you notice in these two rallies, now the third rally,
is Raila now.
This is a new Raila. That's the really Raila people knew in the 90s and 80s. That's the really Raila now. So Ruto is dealing with the real Raila, not the camouflage Raila with a suit. Soon, I will not even be surprised to find Raila in a military fatigue in one of these rallies. The real Raila I know, and that's the Raila you have seen. You've noticed something else. In the past 10 years or so, Raila had abandoned his troops. You saw them yesterday, the Gauchos, people's president, whatever they call themselves, ghetto president, Bunge la Wananchi. They were given an opportunity.
He gave them the mic.
Those are bad boys because me, I know them. I talk to them, I know. These are people who have nothing to lose. And those are the real soldiers. In the process of trying to change his image, Raila distanced himself from those people. Now he has brought them back on board. And the language Raila is using, I don't want to say it's reckless, but surely it's not language you would associate with Raila Odinga. Okay?
To be honest, I was
what does that tell you?
Even by Martha Karua.
Yes.
Because she said you die once.
Once. Unazaliwa siku moja. These are guys all out to cause trouble. They have nothing to lose. And we have been progressively moving to this point, and I've warned many times. The moment you remove hope, you are creating anarchy. The hope that you can win the president in this country has been completely removed now. So people at a point they are saying, we'll do it another way, which is not good for any country. And that's why I invite William Ruto to look at these things more critically than he's doing. If anybody is advising there's anything he can do, when the people spill in the streets, he's lying to him, because there's nothing you can do. And nobody wins. He will not win. Raila will not win. Kenya will not win. We will all be losers. And the responsibility, like somebody said, this is Martin or Prof here, the responsibility is more on the president than the rest. It was you, eh? Because when history is written, they will say things went south during the reign of, during the rule of whatever you call it, of William Ruto, not Raila Odinga. So he has a bigger responsibility to be the bigger brother. It is only him who can extend his hand to Raila. It can't come from Raila. Only him can extend. You see how Uhuru and Raila were cagey about who looked for who.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a very tricky. It's not a simple thing in communication, political communication. It's a very serious thing. Who looked for who? They were avoiding it. But in this instance, it is Ruto to extend his hand to Raila Odinga in the interest of this country. Because none of them will win. Because the Raila I am seeing, the Martha Karua you had, the people you are seeing, you cannot manage them using state power. State power is so limited. State power works when things are moving well. And when there is hope that there is a next election coming and I can win it. But if you have removed that hope, and you see this is not whether it is true or not, whether it's factual or not, it is a question of perception. The perception around the corner now, around this country, is that you cannot have power in a democratic way. That's the perception. It could be far from the fact and from the truth. But in public affairs, perception is king.
Okay. Yeah. And Dr. that is the point Ledama Olekina sought to make yesterday, because he said, you guys can stack who you want at IEBC. It will make no difference to who wins the election. And he said there will be no 2027. On the other side, Ndindi Nyoro Kimani Ichung'wah made the point that you people, this selection panel, you were there as part of the handshake government when this legislation came into play. The only thing we have done is amendments following a court order that the Parliamentary Service Commission, it's unfair for it to have 4 slots and not give other Kenyans the opportunity to participate. So what do you make of that? Because now there's also now that back and forth around the selection of IEBC commissioners.
Remember that while campaigning, Kenya Kwanza promised that they will have a task force that will investigate state capture. They have since reneged on that promise because they realize that state capture is real and is necessary. And for that reason, they are on a journey to capture every state apparatus that is useful to them. The first one they want to grab for themselves is the IEBC. That is common knowledge. They are not going to put men and women in IEBC that they cannot trust or cannot play along with them. They have already demonstrated that they do not trust DCI, and therefore they have put their own men in DCI. They have not trusted police, they have decided to put their own people in police. So you can say they have captured the investigations, they have captured the police. We have seen DPP withdrawing cases left, right, and center. Now, whether the DPP goes shouting on top of the mountain that is independent and that is exercising constitutional powers, we have seen a demonstration that there is state capture. And very early in the days of UDA. To an extent, we are seeing an encroachment on the judiciary. And it's not lost on us. We've seen that capture on the National Assembly as well as the Senate. So this capture issue is real. And for that very reason, they are going to have to contend with the opposition that is coming against them. So the moment people lose trust in institutions, and Prof was talking about how you erode credibility around institutions, it's just to paint them that these institutions are state captured, these institutions are not independent, as the Constitution says. Then that story goes. We can say here in 2023 that whichever IEBC that this government is going to put in place will never be trusted by anybody else out there. Indeed, you can say that this game started a way back, that the Cherera 4, for example, and additional parties into IEBC were perhaps, and I have said this before, perhaps not the most competent Kenyans anybody would have had in a day. But perhaps those were the people who are ready to be used or whatever it was.
In fact, they said that law you're objecting to is the one that was used to install Kina Cherera.
Fair enough. And the point I'm making is that that law, I mean, in other words, that this is not something that is starting with the Kenya Kwanza. Remember, Ruto has been in power even during the Jubilee days. He knows these things as somebody was, that these institutions are captured. That's why he said, let's now investigate state capture. Now he said Uhuru there was capture. He has realized even him, he needs some capture. So he's not going to attack that area. So it's not going to work. So this is a script that he has learned over time. Remember, even before that, the IEBC, the previous IEBC, interim independent, that was at its own issue. So we have a history around electoral bodies. Before that, we had Chesoni, who, I mean, we had the late Chesoni, but also Kivuitu, the late Kivuitu, and his dramatic whatever. So elections have never been conducted by a commission or an entity that Kenyans have trusted. We have seen it right from the 1988, the Mlolongo days. We've seen it. We've seen how we've manipulated elections all through. So elections are manipulated and at best stolen. That we are not going to see a change of it in this regime. But that said, apart from what we are seeing as the animation that is coming from opposition, this Kenya Kwanza government has a very good potential to disrupt itself. You heard them talking about home guards and Mau Mau. And they have this narrative that the people who fought for Mau Mau never benefited, but home guards benefited. Therein lies the tension, the political tension they are generating around owners of capital and the Holoi Poloi, who, if they want to animate, eventually will be their own bed, even in their own backyard, especially in Central. And Rift Valley, because remember, the people who are losing pieces of land were settled under a deal between Moi and Kenyatta 1 in Rift Valley. So basically, these guys have the potential to self-destruct. And because they have the potential to self-destruct, they are throwing fuel at a fire that is being lit by Raila. And as I agree with them, the Raila we are now seeing is a rough tank. Raila tried to play to the Western agenda. They never trusted him. As a matter of fact, these elections was changed at a point at which the Western governments decided that the alternative was better than the status quo, and that what Uhuru was pushing was to maintain status quo, and the alternative would be okay. And that's why those visits in Washington and those visits in London actually served to tilt the electoral platform. Now that said, Raila has decided, let me go back to what I know best and therefore appeal to the left, which he knows best.
Okay.
Now, if you compare what we are having here, there's a parallel to it. Look at Donald Trump and his theory about the nay and the fact that elections were stolen. And he has run with that narrative, and he has massive following around that narrative. He's himself self-destructing, but generally his narrative has traction. Has it stopped Biden from governing? Perhaps not. Now, what can Kenya Kwanza learn from that process? But we learned that they don't want to learn.
Okay. Prof, and it's interesting that you say, even where the West is concerned, you talked about if what happened in Kenya happened in the European Union, Kenya would have been kicked out of the Union. But then again, does he have a case? Prof, Daktari has raised the question of capture. Something that Raila Odinga raised yesterday was a question of corporate capture. And he talked about Ruto engineered a change of guard at Safaricom by installing a new chairman, removing the chairman who was there, installing a new chairman. He talked about the parastate privatization bill that's on the table. And he said you cannot privatize state institutions without the participation of the people.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what the law requires, because the law requires transparency and accountability. What that implies, that is Article 10 is about to go C. What that implies is if you are going to sell anything these days, because, like Daktari said here, this is an immoral society. I think we really need to accept that if you are going to change it.
It is amoral, not immoral. Well, amoral.
I think it is immoral because there's nothing we do straight. That's the European thing. That's why they said if this happen in Europe, there will be this consequences because their things work. People resign when they make a mistake, when they fail to do something, or they do something which is not right. Here we don't. Because, okay, fine, maybe I should borrow you.
It's amoral.
Maybe we are amoral, actually. In other words, morality is relevant to us, okay? So, the law requires that you are accountable and you are transparent. And this is why, if you are going to sell any state asset, you need people's participation. You also need to say why you are selling it. Because if you remember what Kibaki did, the first thing he did when he came was to revive moribund state cooperations which survived Moi. Because I think most of them died during the Moi regime, but things like KCC survived. And Kibaki now, when he came, he wasn't selling them, he was reviving them. So when you start talking about selling something, you are admitting that you can't actually manage them. You can't revive them. You can't re-engineer the management, because we have to agree on one thing. Any institution is about the manager. It's about the leader. Because it's the leader who is coming in to harmonize, to organize resources, both the human and the physical, in order to change and make that institution productive. So the idea of selling this, because I'm not able to manage it, is admission of failure, basically, by the state. So what Raila is saying is, if you want to sell, let's discuss it. Okay? Let's see whether what the reasons for selling, and also let's make sure that you are not selling it to yourself, because you can do that when you have power. Now, the state capture, you just have to look at the tour of the parliament to know what the state capture means. The state capture of institutions leaves citizens helpless without a defender. We can argue that there was no parliament from 2013 up to the last election. Now, if this one continues the way the other one was, then the country sincerely is in trouble. Because parliament, the people's representative, the ones who are supposed to protect you from the government. So you can see some punitive taxes which went through after the handshake, which you would never have gone through if Raila was on the other side, because the parliament was always in agreement. The tour of the parliament never injected anything from the executive. Never. Everything went through because it was in the pocket of the executive. So arguably, we just had a parliament in name. So the state capture here is real, because that's what it means. It means institutions either are unwilling or unable to carry out the requirement of their mandate. That's what the state capture means. And now, he enumerated very well that it could be now happening afresh, of which it shouldn't.
Okay.
But there may have advice for William Ruto from Meru. You see, the Merus usually have very, very literal divorce. And I can tell you the reason for that. You know, they tell you when you are becoming a man, when you have a problem with your wife, unaongojea watoto wanalala. You go and kneel down to her, you cry, you tell her sorry, even if she is the one who was wrong. The idea is you are the big one. You see, in the family, you are the president, okay? So because you are the president, you are the one who will show humility. And that humility will generate harmony. You will have harmony within the family.
Okay.
And government is the big partner in a state. So it is you tomorrow leave from Meru. Remember, we said, watoto wamelala. So you do it in the darkness. There is no press. There is you drive to Raila at night. Unamwambia sasa nimekuja. Sasa tufanye namna gani? So we can have harmony. So we can have peace. So the country can prosper. You know, you will not turn you down. You will have an agreement. So these are some of the things I think they should deploy.
There's a good lesson there from Meru. That's why for a long time Merus were the Democratic Party. They were with the Kibaki throughout. Whether he won or not, Merus were always voting for him. Now you know the secret.
All right, I'll invite you to have the last word on this subject this morning. Speaking of kneeling before your wife in the darkness when the children are asleep. Do you think, given the statements made yesterday in Narok by the Deputy President and the President, that they are preparing their supporters for a conversation between themselves and Raila Odinga? Because we saw Rigathi Gachagua said it's okay, talk to him, but just don't give in to a handshake. Ruto said, I'm willing to talk, I can sit down and talk to all Kenyans because they are Kenyans.
I said, like with all wars, people end up sitting down. You know, people go to war and they fight, and life is lost, sometimes in millions or hundreds of thousands of people. But at the end of the day, people sit down to talk about the things which, if they had talked about before the war, they would have saved all the trouble. They would have saved lives. So this is the same. They can choose to talk now and save us a lot of trouble, or continue with the bravado, both sides, cause destruction, but eventually sit down and talk. It's as simple as that. This is a no-brainer, like people say. You don't need to be a genius. You don't even need to be a political scientist to know that the route Raila has taken will finally force the government into sitting down with them. And at that time, the power the president has, because that man, when he kneels down, I don't quite agree with it. I'm happy I'm not a Meru. That man, when he kneels down, like he says, he's still the man. He's still the man.
He's still the president.
So if you went to Raila now, you will still be the president. But if you wait until that other time, which will come inevitably, from my own reading, and I think many people agree with me, what will be on the table first will be your legitimacy. Before we discuss everything, we are not talking to you as the president of Kenya. It always starts like that, okay? The legitimacy of the president. Sometimes after protracted negotiations, that issue is then settled. Okay, let's sit down, you are the president. But now the demands begin to come in. So why would you wait for that when it's a very, very simple thing? And the advisor to the president are not doing him any good, because that bravado will take the president absolutely nowhere. And Raila said, ask Moi. Because like I've said, power in the modern state is negotiated. You negotiate it even after winning, so that you are legitimately in power. That's what forced Uhuru into the handshake, the legitimacy question. Because if you don't do that, and these so-called rallies, according to Prof here, which will soon spill into more serious things, when they happen, and you have no power, absolutely, to control them, she'll go to talk with them. And you don't have the clout you had as president. Because you are on your knees. A man on their knees, not in the bedroom, really, this time, in public. You are on your knees. Because people know you are negotiating. Sababu umewezwa. Kwa sababu hii niliona Jacaranda. Vijana wanasema katanuka. And that's where we are headed. Okay. It's not good, and I want to make it very clear to Ruto and Raila. It is where we are heading is not good for the country. Okay. Because there are no winners. There are only losers. Yet it can be averted. I'm very sure if William Ruto approached Raila and said, okay, you know I'm the president. In football match, even if you score using the hand of God, the Maradona goal, it is still a goal. So long as referee amesema wapi? Katikati. Yeah. So I'm the president. Now, what is it we can talk about so that at least you people get off the streets? And I'm sure just one thing, if you put the issue of the electoral infrastructure on the table, let us discuss and find out ways and means of ensuring an election in this country will never be stolen again. Exactly. I'm sure Raila will be on that table.
All right.
What will it cost you to do that?
But before he goes away, he should listen to Professor about kneeling at night so that it might be good for him.
Okay. We are going to wind up AM Live on that light note. My name was Olive Burrows. In studio, we've had Hamad Manyora, a political analyst, Professor Gitile Naituli, a governance expert, Dr. Martin Olo, an advocate, and we are keeping an eye on several things. Junior secondary school students report today, beginning today. We also have the president in Mombasa. He's meeting National Assembly legislators who are beginning a post-election evaluation forum, and so there'll be a lot happening there, as well as in Mombasa, I believe, a function for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, which the president will also be at. So that's just some of what we are following today. My name is Oliver, as I mentioned earlier. Have yourself a good morning.
It's the headquarters of good vibes. So I should just kneel and begin to call on Jesus.